My grandmother used to have a painting hanging in her living room. It showed a bright but cloudy sky, trees in autumn, and a river. I loved going to Grandma's house. She always gave us little bottles of bubbles, and on birthdays, she'd throw teal confetti over our heads in celebration before we ate cake. Grandma's been gone since I was 10, but I still love art and bubbles, and I think that's because of my early memories at her house. I blew bubbles the first time I ever got high. I was 14, and one sunny Tuesday afternoon in June, I cut school and joined the potheads playing hooky in the woods. One of the guys, Benjamin, was always trying to get everyone to call him Buzz, bought weed. At first, I coughed so hard I thought I was going to die. I was nervous and felt guilty for trying it. Then this sense of calm came over me, and all the anxiety melted away into giggles. I had bubbles in my backpack, and we all got high and laid down on the grass and started philosophizing about how amazing it was that these little spheres of water and soap could actually exist. The trees looked like they were breathing, and all the colors of nature were so vivid. It was a good day, a nice memory. My encounter with drugs took a harder turn when I started using heroin. I dropped out of college and my parents were so mad that they'd stopped talking to me. I was depressed, although I didn't know it then. I was hanging out with this chick named Renee. She was my best friend, but she was wild. We met at a free summer concert. She'd been on the streets looking after herself since she was 15. She taught me how to drift, how to train hop, how to sleep soundly under bridges to the sounds of passing cars. It's funny, well, not funny, but ironic, because she ended up jumping off a bridge, just like the ones she slept under. I didn't see her do it, but I heard she was smiling, not screaming, the whole way down until she hit the water, splash. Her body wasn't found until nearly a week later. I was in detox at the time. The cops picked me up for vagrancy the week before, and my dad re-entered my life just long enough to get me under lock and key. I'd hated him for it, but now I realize he saved my life. Mostly I'm glad he did, but so must live with the cravings and urges and the fear of relapsing every single day, and the memories. Those are the hardest things to live with, especially when you're perpetually cold, sober. I dropped out of college in 1990, and I was slumming it with Renee until 1993. We followed grunge bands around. Two wannabe groupies, transients, dreaming of stardom. Bands weren't well known. We were all just trying to make it outside the garage. Renee had a thing about drummers and dated a few. I was already too much of a junkie to commit to anyone or anything but partying. More irony. Renee seemed more stable then. But she's the one who died. Logically, I should have overdosed, but I'm still alive and I'm clean, and the intervention worked. I sometimes dream of Renee. It's always the same thing, rendered in black and white on the bridge in daylight. She's walking ahead of me and I'm trying to catch up to her. I want to tell her not to jump, that help is out there and I'll stand by her, but she never turns around. She never looks at me and I can't do anything. I always jolt awake feeling the same pangs of pain I felt when I first heard she jumped. The world is an infinite puzzle, full of little pieces and always changing scenes. A chaotic mosaic that is as beautiful as it is terrible. But I choose to see the good. I choose to gravitate towards the light of the sun, and I want to keep walking the road of life. Renee's a star now. She used to love looking up at them every night, and she'd appreciate their twinkling beauty even when she was shit-faced drunk. That's dedication. That's admiration. That's why I chose and choose to see her in the stars now. After Renee died, I kept calling her phone just to hear her voice on the answering machine. It dawned on me that the machine would eventually fill up and get unplugged, so I decided to record her message. It's low quality, but I treasure that audio clip. Renee's voice inspires me to keep going, to keep enjoying bubbles and sunshine, and one day, maybe I'll see her again on another plane than this.
Hey guys, it's Renee. Probably hanging out with some cool rock stars or something like that. Leave one, and if I paid my phone bill, I'll get back to you.
I always thought brick walls had character. Concrete is plain and dull, but bricks have textures and patterns, and that nice red coloring. The elementary schoolyard had a brick wall. It wasn't even noticed by the other kids, but it was a source of fascination for me. Sometimes when I was bored, I would sit close to it and just stare at it, examining every brick. My classmates thought I was crazy, retard, and loco were thrown my way more than once. But I didn't care about the slurs, because I could see the beauty in that wall, something that no one else could see. It was like my special secret treasure, a beacon of joy in a desolate neighborhood. The caterpillars also gave me joy. They were small and light green. In the late spring and summer, I'd find them in the alley behind the laundromat where my mother worked. They intrigued me. They existed amid the cracks in the concrete and on the bark of the few trees that grew in the barrio. I felt protective over them and moved them into the safety of the grass whenever I could. I knew few others would be so kind. I got a kaleidoscope for Christmas when I was 7. Mama found it at Goodwill. I loved that thing and the colors and shapes it exposed me to. Later I got into making art, graffitiing trains at night and running from the cops. But my tags had style and got recognition. When I was 14, Mrs. Carroll took note of my talent. She was my teacher and an older white lady who seemed to come from another planet than me and everybody I knew. But she was nice, decent, decente. She showed me a picture of this painting called Starry, Starry Night, and I've always wanted to go see it because the museum it's in isn't too far from my hood. But I never had the guts to go to a fancy place like a museum. She convinced the principal to let me paint a mural for the schoolyard on the same brick wall that had fascinated me when I was a kid. I didn't cover that nice red brick completely, but I did paint a green caterpillar, inching away towards better things. Art makes me feel like fireworks are going off in my mind. It's pure joy. I've always been somewhat jealous of the caterpillars and how they can so easily inch away from their problems. Mrs. Carroll liked caterpillars too. She told me about this hombre named Eric Carle, who wrote a famous kids book about one. And even though I was a teenager, I read it and I enjoyed it. I suppose that's a big part of why I got into fixing up old cars, the one acceptable form of self-expression among the muchachos I grew up with. I love doing custom paint jobs, and I even find the sparks from the welding beautiful. I can find joy amid the concrete and imperfection of the neighborhood because I seek joy. That was the difference between me and my cousin Ernesto. He grew up right alongside me, one grade up, and he appreciated music. He wanted to be a DJ, but the streets got in his way. He mean-mugged at the wrong dude one night and got shot in the face. He was dead before he hit the ground, and my auntie couldn't even have an open casket funeral for him. I made a mural for Ernesto. Stars surrounded him on a stage at a concert DJing, even though the biggest gig he ever actually got was my cousin's quinceañera. It was my best work, my masterpiece. because it reflected who he was. I got photos of it, and it stayed up on the wall by the bodega for over a year before someone graffitied gang signs over it. A year here without vandalism is akin to a century anywhere else. I use art to fight my depression, the condition that I hide because it makes me feel weak. The perception of weakness that others would hold towards me, if they knew, would be worse. I'm a man. I should be strong. I should be stoic. Society isn't always civilized, but art is a window to humanity and better things, even in the worst circumstances. Art and life are kaleidoscopes, always morphing and changing and inspiring. That and good people like Mrs. Carroll are some things to hold on to, some things to inch towards, and some things worth living for.
I don't know why I'm thinking about horses. This is not the time to think about horses, but thinking about them I am. I'm pissed off, but that's no surprise. Anger has always been my default setting. It's like a volcano inside of me, or a wildfire. I suppose the latter is the better analogy, because I've started more than one fire in my time, and I've lived through them. Where I grew up, wildfires were a yearly occurrence. We had to evacuate only once though, but once was enough. Before we left, I got into it with my mom because I had caught a bunch of fireflies in a jar the night before, and I wanted to take them with us, but she wouldn't allow it. She ended up letting them all out of the jar, and I was screaming and freaking out, thinking that they were all going to die in flames, although smoke inhalation is probably actually what did them in. Anyway, I ended up sitting in a shelter, which was just a rundown, smelly, overcrowded gym, with my pissed off mom, who couldn't stop crying, and this weird old guy who kept staring at me and licking his lips. I was 8. I still get a surge of anger when I think about it, and remember how much I wanted to punch his lights out. It's not like I hadn't knocked anybody out before. Mommy Dearest was a high school dropout. The best she could do was work at a checkout counter. We couldn't afford no pony. Hell, she could barely afford to let me take rides on the quarter machine horsey in front of the Quickie Mart. One of my most epic childhood fights was over a quarter for that pony. I got into it with another kid and decked him, and he fell backwards and hit his head. That was the first time I ever hospitalized someone. I was 6. My temper finally got the best of me. I always knew it would, but this shit is especially spectacular, even for me. I burned Fred's apartment down. He wasn't home, but the neighbors were. I didn't know that. I didn't mean for the fire to spread. I didn't mean to hurt them. It's ironic that I'm thinking about fire and burning with rage, because I don't think I've ever been this cold before. The bitter freeze is chilling me to the bone. The car broke down 2 hours ago. There is no service up here, so my phone's useless. If I want to get in touch with civilization, I need to get back to the gas station I passed like 15 minutes back, which might as well be 15 fucking miles. I could die out here, and if I do, I have only myself to blame. The world is iced in, the roads are a sheet of glass, and yet I walk along because it's not like I've got a choice. I've still got Wildfire with me, the plastic toy pony that I got at this ratty 99-cent shop when I was 4. I'm usually not sentimental, but I'm attached to this thing. It's been everywhere with me, my constant, silent companion. Goddamn white horse, Alaska. I never wanted to live so far up north, but I followed Fred and his stupid band, Hades Steeds, lame as fuck name for a metal group, and stood by as he worked the oil rig until he got heavier into the pills and the booze, and it all fell apart. He shouldn't have hit me. If he hadn't hit me, I never would have gone for the matches. Fred told me that he had a horse when he was a kid. Well, a pony. It was one of those small breeds that never seems to grow up. He said he used to ride on it and loved it, but then it got lame and sick and his uncle ended up shooting it. I told him about the horses that I saw out the window after I got locked up at 14 for setting my mom's crappy old car on fire. It was parked on the street, so the cops couldn't say I was trying to burn the house down and kill Ma, but I swear she nearly had a heart attack when she saw what I'd done. Hey, if I couldn't get driven to the skater park, then she couldn't drive to the liquor store. What I didn't expect was for the tree beside the car to go up, and then the fire department showed up, and then the neighbors got evacuated because our neighborhood was as poor as fuck, and the houses were on top of each other, and it was windy that night, and the marshal was all freaked out about the fire spreading. They got it out eventually, but my mom ratted me out to the cops. I was too young to go to jail, and they considered juvie, but based on how I ranted and raved, they assumed I was crazy. Mommy Dearest was also right quick to tell them all about how my dad was crazy in the head. I never met him, but she told me he ended up lying in some long-term care facility with brain damage after he got his skull split open in a bar fight. She said he was antisocial and schizoid, and if you ask me, she was describing herself. But whatever, water finds its own level. So I ended up in court-mandated lockup, which was actually a psych center that might as well have been a country club. It was located out in the boondock, and it was a new building with these huge windows overlooking this giant pasture where a bunch of horses roamed around. I even saw a double rainbow in the sky one day. I got addicted to sitting by the window, just staring at the horses, and, surprisingly, no one fucked with me. I guess they were probably hiding meds in my food or something, because I was calmer than I'd ever been before. Tranquil, to use a $5 word. Or maybe it was the horses. I loved watching them. They seemed so free. I mean, I know they were in a pen, but that just means they were fake. Free, but also safe, which were two things I couldn't have imagined being. I never liked talking to the shrink, but I did tell them about the horses and how they made me feel good. The professionals thought that was a good sign. They encouraged me to seek out a career with horses, and I considered it, but then I ended up going back to my old habits. I don't know why I do the things that I do. I get pissed off, I see red, and shit goes bad real quick. I get mad, then I replay everything in my head, and that leads to me feeling sad and ashamed, and angry with myself. It sometimes feels like I'm disappearing, losing myself to a void of emptiness that's only briefly filled by destructive rage. Now I'm running, but not free. I'm bridled, like those horses. I'm running from another bad relationship, from my actions, my temper, but I'll never outrun myself.
From the time I learned to read, I wasn't a good sleeper. I'd worry about the big bad wolf, the monster under the bed, the boogeyman. It got worse when I was old enough to read the paper, because that made me worry about serial killers and world warfare and toxins. Then I read an article about ASMR, a community on YouTube dedicated to sleep and relaxation. The paper that had caused me such stress finally provided relief. Or at least it did, until COVID hit. The pandemic was the realization of my nightmares. All the terror of a potential apocalypse come to fruition. I grew up in a small town. The New York Times inspired me to escape to the Big Apple. I found a little one-room apartment. It was dingy and had cracked ceilings. Roaches were my roommates, but it was a roof over my head. I was never a good student. I didn't finish school. That limited my employment options. I couldn't stop working. I needed the money. I got a job in food delivery. was low wage and high stress, weaving an aging rickety bicycle, in between cars sardined between fact urban streets. My life was a soundtrack of blaring horns and hurled cusses, but I liked the speed of cycling. It was like flying, constantly dodging death and avoiding steel, tires, pedestrians, and small dogs. Most of my customers were nice. New Yorkers tip well. I missed their smiles in the time of masks. I was careful. I covered my face. I washed my hands diligently. I social distanced. But it wasn't enough. I caught the virus. It started with a bad cough. Then I lost my sense of smell and taste. The disease is eating away at me, shutting down my faculties. All I can do now is rest. I'm so tired. I can't stop thinking about Geraldine, the woman I should have been. I was born a boy, and it was wrong. I always knew it was wrong, but I kept that a secret. I went online and ordered frilly summer dresses and heels and makeup, and admired myself in the mirror, in the sanctuary of my apartment. No one ever saw me in Geraldine's splendor, my true self. I dreamt of cycling as Geraldine, fierce and fearless. I'd grow out my locks and I'd get more tips as a beautiful, delicate young woman. Geraldine would have taken up journalism and written positive articles to combat all the negative ones. She would allow readers to feel hope instead of dread. But that dream, that secret desire, is unattainable now. Unrealized. A missing piece to life's puzzle. Fragmented ideals like torn papers blowing in the wind. All there is left to do is pray to the universe, the expansive galaxy, and hope that my soul is recycled, delivered through the corridor of another plane, from one earthly body to another, ready to begin life anew and start fresh as one reborn. I sometimes saw the Grim Reaper approaching, flying alongside my bike, waiting to swoop in and take me to the afterlife, if I even made one wrong move. Now he's hovering over me once again. This time I've got no pedals to push, no way to escape him. COVID area. No entry. The final frontier. At least for the time being.
Once the desert called to me, as now does the woods. But my true home is the highway. I dream of the roads and my travels through mountain ranges and beaches and deserts and everywhere in between. I love sunsets and clouds and the infinite possibilities of the road. I backpack, I wander, and I dream of Pele, the goddess of fire. I've known about her for years. Raven told me all about her when I was 16. Raven knew everything. She was a goth and 2 years older than me. I met her when I started working at the town's sole oddity, a new age shop. We bonded over our mutual love for classic rock, the Grateful Dead chief among them. My straight-laced parents didn't like her, but I was captivated. She liked to drink. She'd steal bottles from her house, which was easy since both of her parents were alcoholics. And she and I would guzzle them down on the roof of the abandoned sawmill factory at night. I got more of a taste for liquor than I expected. Raven renamed herself. She hated the sound of Bethany, so she called herself after her favorite bird, a clever and dark yet fiery creature that mirrored her soul. She was a dropout, but she was the smartest person I ever met. She knew about the cosmos. She knew about ancient gods and goddesses. She knew about art and literature. It was she who told me about the Burning Man Festival. I hitchhiked my way to it when I was 18. That was a little less than a year after Raven skipped our quiet Delaware town with a biker gang. She never gave me any forewarning or said goodbye. I travel the roads hoping I'll see her again one day, but it's been over 20 years and not a single sighting. Attending the Burning Man was life-altering. It was music and art, massive sculptures and stilt walkers and fire eaters and costumes and everything in between. I was introduced to C9 there. It altered me, opened my third eye. I can see the eye of God looking down on me, guiding me. It lives in the cosmos, directing us all. After that, I couldn't go back. My transient, homeless existence is worlds away from the upper crust of Dover society that my parents hailed from. They think I'm crazy. They wanted to put me away, which only made me run further. I haven't had any contact with them in decades. I've devoted my life to seeking knowledge. They don't understand, they can't, but my life is more fulfilling than any suit or mansion or high-flying career ever could be. The universe fascinates me, the vastness of space and the star signs. I wish I had listened more carefully to Raven when she talked about astrology. No one listens when I tell them these things, except for Blue-Eyed Pete. I met him when we were both living rough, camped out in tents behind the desert Circle K. Pete came from Oregon. He was nearly 30 years older than me, but he was good company. He said he'd seen Bigfoot when he was a boy. He said it had chased him through the woods. It was a huge creature, he said, terrifying but awesome all at once. Aliens built the pyramids, Raven knew that. I've always believed in aliens, and if they exist, then surely Bigfoot does too. I want to go see the mysterious creature for myself. I've enjoyed my time in the desert, but now the forest is my destiny. An arrow in my brain is pointing north, and my wheels are spinning thinking of what I'll say to Sasquatch. Maybe I'll see aliens up there too, because I've never had any luck in the desert. I'll get some C9 and look for God to speak to me and answer my questions. Seeing the truth revealed is the purest form of bliss, like being on cloud 9. Maybe God will know about the aliens, or maybe he'll launch an asteroid at me. God can be vengeful, but I've had a good life. I'm a wanderer and a seeker of truth. I've harmed no one. I don't fear death. It's just the door to the next life that we get closer to every minute of every day. But I want to live among the trees and seek Bigfoot before I go. Maybe one day I'll see Hawaii, the land of Pele too. Asteroids be damned. God may do as he sees fit. But there is no infinite blackness. Everything recycles and evolves. It's a cycle, a loop. Endless, boundless. Rebirth is light at the end of the tunnel. Hence, darkness is nothing to fear.